All right, here are the Chapter 3 and 4 study guide notes for Ender's Game. Chapter 3 is titled Graf. What does it first seem Graf has arrived to do? What does he really want? Colonel Graf is from the International Fleet. He's in charge of Battle School, and everyone thinks he's there to question Ender about his attack on Stilson. But in reality, he wants to take Ender to Battle School. Graf says Ender must volunteer to go to Battle School, and he personally tells Ender many reasons which might convince Ender not to go. What aspects of Battle School does Graf warn him about? He tells him there's no vacations, no visitors, he wouldn't see his mother or father, but especially Valentine. Valentine is the one person that Ender is truly connected with, and that's going to be the toughest part of leaving home and going to Battle School. Describe Valentine. How does she feel about Ender? Why wasn't she chosen for Battle School? Valentine loves Ender very much, probably the most of anyone in the family, and she protects him from Peter. Her compassion is what kept her out of Battle School. We've talked quite a bit about that. This is the first time that the guy, this person, Mazer Rackham, has been talked about. He plays a huge part in the story later on. Mazer Rackham destroyed the buggers during the second invasion. He was outnumbered and outgunned, but he used brilliant maneuvers to destroy the buggers. Oh, also Mazer Rackham, that was about 80 years ago. The second invasion was 80 years ago. What are Ender's reasons for deciding to go to Battle School? This is not a simple question, and he has several reasons. First is to get away from Peter. This is one of the biggest ones. Also, as Graf explained why Ender was allowed to be born, Ender felt an obligation to go to Battle School because that was the overall reason why he's on Earth. Chapter 4 is called Launch. This is where Ender leaves and goes to Battle School. Isolation is a big part of what happens in this story. Why do you think they want to isolate Ender from other Battle School recruits? How does Graf go about isolating Ender in this chapter? Isolation is a major theme in the story, and Graf isolates Ender so he won't be able to rely on anyone else but himself. Graf tells the rest of the launch group that the only one with brains and the only one smart enough is Ender. The other kids begin to pick on him. How does Ender differ from the other boys in the launch group? The other boys are laughing and goofing around while Ender is quiet and keeps to himself. Go lock the door. Discuss whether Graf is Ender's friend or not. Be thorough, as your answer will change during the course of the chapter. At first, Ender thinks Graf is his friend, but it becomes clear that he's not. Graf singles out Ender so the other boys will pick on him. Then he comes right out and tells Ender he's not his friend. What effect does Graf's assertion that Ender will be a commander while the other boys are still learning have? How does Ender feel about this statement? Again, this statement isolates Ender, puts him above the rest of the launch group, which makes Ender feel very uncomfortable. Ender just wants to be liked, to be normal, but Graf isn't going to let that happen. And then the last thing that happens in this chapter is how does the incident with the other cadet mirror the Stilson episode? How does Ender feel about this? So Ender shows the other kids that he's not one to be messed with. And he does this by the other cadet is picking on him, and he throws him and ends up breaking his arm. He does this again. It was out of instinct, but he does this to show the other kids not to mess with him. At the end, Ender feels awful about what he did, and he feels like he is just like Peter. All right, that's it for the Chapter 3 and 4 notes.